Hi everyone, Mike Franco here, and today I wanted to talk about Clockback, my newest short film. If you have not seen it, I would suggest watching it before this video, which is going to go in depth on the short film. So it will be in a link in the description below if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're watching on Facebook, it will be on my page that you are watching this video on. However, I wanted to take you through the process of where I started with this project versus where I ended, and so you can kind of see how I did it, maybe make your own suggestions towards me, or take ideas from me that will help you with your own projects as well. So let's get started. And to start, I want to talk about the inspiration behind Clockback and overall where it decided to come from, where the idea even came from to make a project like this and turn it into what it was. So to start, when I was at work, I was obviously, most people, if you're bored, you're looking at the clock and you're thinking that the time's either going back in time because it's like going so slow, and you get those moments, right? You're at work and the clock is just going super slow that it feels like the clock is actually going back in time versus progressing time. And so I thought that that would be a nice idea to turn into some sort of a story, but I wasn't sure how to approach it. So I kind of tucked it in my back pocket, maybe thought that it would be better in a later use of a situation that would come up later on where I can utilize sort of that story more often. And at first, what I was thinking of doing for that story was making it sort of like a work situation where the clock was looking as if it was going back in time, with the idea of an office worker, because you know the general typical office workers behind the computer doing faxes and emails and all that stuff, and it's like the general idea behind what you would consider to be work. And so that's what I thought of, and that's what I thought of the setting of what it was. But after that, I kind of tucked it away because I didn't really know if I could do something like that, where more or less where I could get a location where I could do something like that, or so on and so forth. And then I kind of thought of the same idea afterwards, after thinking about it for a while, and the thought process could take little time or big time depending on how you think. And I like to think of lots of things, lots of details. And so it became a process where I was thinking of doing it as a work-related scenario. And then I said, well, what about a school-related scenario with like a kid? And how the main idea was still there, that the clock was still, you know, a fear of time. But I changed it in a little bit of ways. Versus the original idea of the clock going too slow, versus now the clock seems like it's going a little bit too fast, or uncontrollable is the word that I would like to call it, to this kid in this scenario when he's taking his test at school. And so the progression, there's a lot more details involved with it, but the short note is that the progression and the inspiration came while I was at work and I was looking at the clock. And then it eventually became from an office worker to a kid. And I had the location of a school. I actually filmed at my old high school, so it worked out great because I could use the location looking like a school, and I had some extra people to help me on with doing this, and my friend wanted to help out as well, who is obviously the main star in the short film. So that is that for the inspiration side of things. And after I sort of figured out where I was going with this project, I realized that I could make this happen, and not like trying to rush it along, but I wanted to make this happen as a real project, and I haven't really worked on anything in a while. So I started to kind of compile, not sort of a script, because there's obviously no dialogue in the film. A lot of my films don't have a ton of dialogue. There are some, like It's High Noon, that has the McCree lines in it from Overwatch, and there are some other exceptions in there as well, with the Call of Duty videos where it was the COD King series, where Call of Duty King, of course, Kevin, my friend, starred in those as well. And I like doing that, and they had a bunch of dialogue in it. But for this one, I specifically was thinking about adding in dialogue, but then I thought that I really wanted to capture the moment, the time, versus talking involved. If you were to talk to maybe per se a teacher, if we had Kevin talk to a teacher or something like that. And I didn't think that that was really necessary So I just wanted to have the background music kind of take over and let the viewer experience what it might be that they're anxious about taking this, or seeing how it is from their point of view versus any dialogue. So I chose that specifically, and then we're moving on to pre-production now, which so I was talking about writing the script sort of how it was going to go, scene by scene, which there aren't many scenes in it, and of course it's a short film, but mainly in general I wrote it on Adobe Story CC Plus because I have the Adobe Creative Cloud for my Los Angeles Film School online program that I am currently attending. And so I wrote this out, and afterwards a lot of what I did was in pre-production. Pre-production was the main stage for this, and going into pre-production is, once you get pre-production out of the way, and well, especially once you get production out of the way, you feel so much happier. But once you get pre-production out of the way, you take care of a lot of the work in pre-production. A lot of the things in pre-production, you have to think about everything, and the things that you don't think about could either affect you later in production or post-production or in the finished product, or you'll just have to think of them as you come on set for production and in post-production. And you want to get out of the way the things, all the details in pre-production. You really want to do that. So anyways, getting into pre-production, after I wrote that out, I storyboarded the entire thing by hand, obviously, like going shot by shot, figuring that out. And in doing that, in my other projects, I never storyboarded. I just kind of wrote what was going to happen, the script, and then when we started actually production, we started filming it, it was like, oh, well, should I do this, should I do that? And I wasted a lot of unnecessary time that I could have had in production working to better the film of how it turned out, versus if I did it in pre-production and planned out at least some of the shots, maybe not all of them, but for this film I did every single shot that you see within the film. And of course in production, when I did the pre-production, I did not have access to where I was going to actually be filming, so I kind of made the background up in my mind as to how the school was, and plus I knew how the school looked anyways, so I plan that out the best as I can, and in doing that, it really helps. You wouldn't think it would be like, oh, well, maybe when you're on set, you can change something, how it looks versus how something might get in the way or whatever. But for the most part, pre-production is the main stage, and you want to have a great pre-production so when you get to post-production, you don't have to ask as many questions, and everything could go a lot smoother. So that was that for pre-production. Of course, I'm going to be showing you some of my pre-production storyboards for Clockback throughout this, and a bunch of production and post-production work as well as I'm talking. So, in production, we arrived at the school, meaning my friend, who was the star, Kevin, and then I had an extra play as another test taker, who his name is Etienne, and I had Martin helping me out with some behind the scenes, getting out the gear and the gear setup, and he played a little bit of a part in there, as you probably saw as well. And having extra people do productions is really not only helpful, but it's important, because if you're trying to do something by yourself, like if it was just me and Kevin and I had no extra, well, first of all, there would be no extra in the film, which didn't really make a huge impact on what the film was trying to portray, but it's just going to show how much effort went into making it. But if you don't have someone there helping you out, or as much help as you can get, you start to think, you have to think of more things, which is more overwhelming than it should be. So I thank you to everyone who was with me in this production, and thank you, and how the final production turned out. But anyways, when we were filming this, I of course went according to my storyboards as best as I could. I tried to produce it as fast as I can in in a quality manner, but trying to get it done as fast as I can because I actually had work that same day. So I wasn't trying to rush the film, but I wanted to get it done in a timely manner, which is why I thought of everything in pre-production, and there it comes again, where planning and pre-production really helps. So the production moved along pretty fast, and I was getting the shots and stuff that I wanted to get, and what you see in production, there's pretty much, I can't really say anything, the film really says it all. So when we move into post-production, this is where my main stuff comes in. Like, I could work a lone wolf on editing post-production. With the camera work and stuff, I need help, and most people do need help, but when it comes to editing, that is my bread and butter, if you will, and I love to do it. I've been doing it for over 5 years now. Not really, I guess you could say professionally, but growing and growing and growing for 5 years, and still growing, and you will always still continue to grow. And so when I got into post-production, I was very happy to see how this turned out. And to start off with the post-production, I wanted to make an intro to the short film with using After Effects of some sort to make some sort of clock, and I didn't want it to be too, you know, like, take like a week to make. I wanted to make something that looks good, but it's simple, because I'm a simple guy, and I wanted to do that. And so what I ended up doing for the intro, and of course as for the teaser of the film, I created something in Adobe Illustrator, which was a simple clock with of course the dials and then the arrows on the clock, and then I put that into After Effects and I animated the clock, and to do that I used the separate layers for the arrows, of course, and then after I animated it, I brought that into Premiere and then added the titles. And to do all that, it took about a little over 3 hours just to make that intro and the teaser. So something like that, that's literally a 30-second clip, took about 3 hours of work to produce that part. And then getting into the other productions of the main core of the film, or the short film, I wanted to have it more of a cold or uneasy feeling, not so blue that it's recognizable, but the temperature of it used to be, well, I'll show you earlier versions as I'm talking. The early version of it, when we filmed and stuff, it was obviously warm because of the lights that were coming down and we're inside, so it was warm lighting. And I didn't want to have warm lighting because warm is welcoming. Cold is sort of an uneasy feeling, and that's what I was going for. So what I did was when I made the color correction for the film, I made it bluer, colder, not too much, but a little bit, just to kind of portray that feeling. And I think that overall feeling turned out pretty well. And so that was the post-production. And one thing that I'll add before I talk about the finishing stuff, and another thing which I'll get to at the end, is that when you're exporting it, you're like, yeah, this is the final export, and then you're watching it, and you watch your films when you make them, or whatever projects you do, over 50 times. You must, because number one, you're not only watching it in the editor, but when you render out a finished thing that you're like, yeah, this is the golden version, you look at it and you're watching it and it's like, yeah, this is good, and there's one little tiny detail that you might miss out on, or something that is just so minor, but it makes a huge difference. So you're like, now I'm gonna go back. So I made about 6 versions of Clockback. I rendered out 6 times Clockback, and the 7th version was the final one that I used 6 times to get that all right. And normally you do that, it's like, well, why do that when you could just watch it in the editor and stuff? I like to render out a lot, maybe a lot more sometimes. I don't know if I'm considered to render out a lot, depending on what other people do. But I like to render out when I do major things, just to see where the film or project is coming along. And not like I'm gonna render out like, oh, I make a little change and I'm gonna render it out, but I mean, like, if I make enough significant changes, I like to render it out, look at it, and then take it upon myself to see what I can change or if it's good as it is. And so I like to do that, and to watch it as a viewer, not looking at the bottom timeline where I'm editing it. And I think that that's just what I like to do. But anyways, so now we're getting on into the finished product of Clockback, which at this point is finished, and now it's more into getting to the posting side of things, posting it on my Facebook and on my YouTube. The teaser was actually posted while I was working on the film, and that might be a little harsh to say. It's like, how can you post a date that you're gonna have the film done by when you didn't even complete it yet? Because at the time I posted the trailer, the film was nowhere near done. It wasn't, I don't even think it was edited together. It might have been edited together, but it wasn't even nowhere near where the finished product was. But I knew that once I edited the film together, that the rest of the editing, which is like small cuts and sound effects and the way the color correction is and all the minor details that make up the rest of the major part of how good the film looks afterwards in the production, or I mean in the post-production. And so I did the teaser trailer, but when I was getting ready to post the actual film, then it went live on June 1st, YouTube and Facebook, which is my page on Facebook. And so and I had like the of course the description of it, and I think that overall the feedback that number one that I've been getting on it is overall positive from the feedback that I have gotten on it. And overall, I think that it turned out to be quite a success. At this point, I don't really have anything that I would think of that I could have done maybe better. Now, of course, in the future, as I go along for future projects, you always try and advance and you try and grow and you try and make your next project better and better and better. So, looking back on it in the future, maybe I will see something that I could have improved on, but for now, I tried to put my best work forward, and that's exactly what I did with Clockback. Now, I didn't want to make this video so long, but it probably turned out that way anyways, but I hope you did enjoy that. And for the final piece that I would like to talk about in this video before I end it off, I might end up making a separate video on this later on in the future sometime, or I might not. It depends. It could happen in the next couple of weeks, or it could not happen at all, depending on what happens and where I decide to go with this. But I am planning on a huge project in the future, something that is, number one, that I've never done before, and number two, that it's absolutely, without a doubt, hands down, it will be the biggest project that I would have worked on. Now, unfortunately, I can't share any details with you on this project that I'm working on because I still have to get things together and make sure about it before I share it. But I wanted to let you know that that's what I'm working on, along with my stuff for school and college, of course. I will be hopefully working on this huge project that I want to share with you, but I can't just as of now. But stay tuned, because I plan on sharing it hopefully as soon as I can. But thank you for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy more of an inside view, a backdrop to what I was working on, and some stuff to come in the future. And that's it for this. I'll see you on the next one. I'm Mike Franco, signing off.